Welcome to our first project in graphic design. Um, this project is really twofold. It's one about building your awareness of design and beginning to build a bit of a vocabulary of what makes up, what are the parts, the components of design. The first part, of course, is awareness, right? You have to be aware that design actually exists. And if you think about it, really design is everywhere, whether it's the handiwork of man or the handiwork of God. Design is everywhere. And you'll notice as you begin to get through this class that your heightened awareness is going to become, you're going to become so acutely aware of what design is and where it is and if it's good or if it's bad or whether you respond favorably or not. And this is really the beginning of that of your process of your process of getting there. This is the beginning of your journey. So let's talk a little bit about the first part about awareness, about seeing design. If we think about it, a building is design, landscape architecture design, interior design is design. You look at your house, you look around, you decided to put a picture on that wall, you decided to put a piece of furniture there, you decided to paint the walls a certain color. You were making design decisions whether you knew it or not. You were making a conscious decision to try and make your space more appealing to you, and maybe to others as well. Who knows? If you look at a building, a designer decided, what size that window was going to be, where it was going to be, what the color of the mullion strip was going to be, where the door was going to go, what's the color of the door, is it a single door or a double door? So all these, every time a designer looks at something, they're trying to make a positive impression on the people who are going to be interacting with that space or that thing or that object or whatever it happens to be. You even walk around the campus if you're on the Oceanside campus, and the landscape architecture is really quite good on the campus. I mean, there's very cool things happening all the time. You'll notice as you begin to become aware that design is often in odd numbers. 1, 3, or 5 are just visually more interesting than 2 or 4. You look at a little cluster of plants. There's usually almost always 3, and one's small and one's medium and one's tall. So anyway, design's everywhere. So what you're going to do with this particular project is you're going to look at several pieces or a piece of design and look at the project sheet to determine what kind of design it is you're going to be looking at. And you're going to be analyzing that. Now, as I look at the project sheet on my iPhone, you are going to write on your blog a paper that covers 3 topics. The first one is you're going to basically write just a simple paragraph right now on what you think graphic design is. I don't care whether you're right or wrong. I just want you to say, I think graphic design is this and why. You're going to research the history of graphic design on the internet, and you're going to write at least 3 paragraphs on how graphic design has affected society. This is a historical angle on it, but it's history could be last week, it could be a month ago, it could be 5 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 1,000 years ago. It doesn't really matter. Graphic design has been around for a very, very long time in one way, shape, or form. You could say that really the birth of graphic design as a conscious medium was probably around the time of just after the time of the printing press, is when people started to think about advertising things and being able to get the word out about things, whether it was a town hall meeting or whether it was a snake oil, potion for something, or whether it was a service or whatever. People started to think about putting typography and images together to make a message. So you can look at that in maybe a very, very common example of how graphic design has impacted society is during World War II and the Nazi propaganda machine. You can look at our current state of the media and the propaganda that is all over the place. How the media elected Barack Obama to the presidency is a really good example. I mean, it was a massive propaganda machine that basically elected a guy to office. This happens constantly, mind you. It's not just a situation that just happened. But historically, we can look at a number of different things that have occurred and how graphic design has influenced society. Okay, now you're going to take the last part of this is you're going to locate a good design example and write at least a one-page design critique. All right, now what this means is that you're going to, if I were you, I would go onto Google and I would Google images for great ad campaigns or something like that. Be creative, you know, great book covers. Or book cover design or magazine design or something, you know, just be creative about it and Google some images, save that image, you're going to want to save it, and then you're going to write a design critique. In the design critique, and you're going to go, well, I don't know anything about design, and that's fine. I don't really care that you know yet. What I want you to do is become aware. That's the most important thing of this particular project. So it should be a good example, I guess what I would say, an example of good design. I don't want to see ads for Walmart or for Best Buy or something like that, things that look like crap. I don't want you to critique something that looks bad. That's not the point. We all know that bad design is everywhere, constantly, all over the place, all the time. We don't need to critique bad design. I want you to look at something that you think is good, and I want you to critique it from why you think it's good, and this is the criteria. You're going to look at the overall design. Okay, so the overall design, you're going to go through the Wishes Wong's 2D design book, and you're going to go through Robin Williams' non-designers design book, and you're going to identify at least 3 different design concepts. That is contrast, repetition, whatever, that are used in the design, and explain how they are used. All right, so the concept here is that you're going to be basically, seeing, wow, I think this could be that, and why. That's it. You're going to look at color, and you're going to talk about the color scheme or the mood, and do you think it's appropriate? Now, obviously, if it's an ad, I think it's going to be easier than something like a book cover. Advertisements are they're more targeted, they're more focused, they're more specific. So I think that if you stuck with an ad, it would be the easiest thing to do. Doing something like an interface design for a website, much more complex, because the design requirements for something that complex is considerably out of the box in terms of what we're trying to do here. So, for your own benefit, I would try to keep it simple. So you're going to look at the color and you're going to say, well, what's the mood? You know, so for example, if it's an upbeat ad for a skateboard or something like that, it's going to have a different kind of color scheme than something that might be, like, say, for a car, like a Mercedes-Benz or an Audi or something like that. So, look at the color scheme and just say that, the color scheme is silverish or cool, or it's bold, or it's primary, or whatever, and just use whatever terms and words that you are aware of and try to describe it. You're going to look at the type. And you're going to you're going to peruse through the Robin Williams design book, and you're going to ask yourself some questions like, can I read the text? Is it legible? Is the font cool? Does it seem appropriate for what they're trying to say or sell or whatever? And again, there are no right or wrong answers here. It's just observation. I'm just trying to get you to look at what it is that is, the components of this particular design example, and you're just beginning to become aware of these things. So again, I don't care whether your observations are right or wrong. I just want you to begin to look to see. You're going to look at composition. You're going to look at, again, I don't want to tell you too much. I'd rather have you experiment with your own ideas and experiment with your own observations. But look at the composition. Who do you think the target market might be? Does the design support it? You know, if it's a really, really cool, sophisticated ad for some very cool new, you know, iPad, you know, something or other, well, that's going to be, you know, is that particular design, does it, you know, who do you think the target market is, and does it work for that market? Try to explain why you think so, obviously. Is it composition, dynamic, or static? What does that mean? You know, what does it mean to you? What does dynamic mean to you, to static, you know? So you just try and figure out, you know, some of your own observations and what they mean. Could it be improved? You know, a lot of times you just look at something and go, oh, that sucks, or wow, that's so cool, you know? Well, try to explain why you think it sucks or why you think it's cool. Can you determine if there's a structure? You know, structure is basically an underlying grid, if you will, that the pieces are kind of hung on or attached to, or they fill in the spaces. And sometimes structure is very obvious, and sometimes it's not so obvious. And so you are going to look at this and you're going to go, do I think there's a structure here or not? Sometimes it's quite clear, sometimes not. And if it is, then say so. If it's not, then say why not. And then offer your opinion about why, what is it? And if you could change 3 things about it, what would they be and why? And you might say, well, I don't like the color, it should have been more pink, or the type could have been bigger, or the images are confusing, or there are too many, or not enough, or whatever. So again, there are no right or wrong answers to this particular project. It's just a situation where I want you to look at it and try and figure out what you're seeing. That's all we're trying to do here. I just want you to begin to see. Okay? So the other demos on this particular project are on the website. They explain more about the technical requirements and where to put stuff and all that other good things. So trick here is to begin to think about design, become aware of design, and begin to realize that there's a vocabulary of verbiage that we are going to begin to use, and the books will help you with some of that verbiage and those definitions and those terms, and you will want to begin to, you know, put those into our own personal design vocabulary. Okay, so have some fun with this. You know, do some research. Don't pick the first thing you see. Look around some and find something that really appeals to you, so that you have an affinity for it. If you just pick the very first thing that walks down the block, well, you know, that may or may not have been the best choice. Okay, have some fun.